Spirit, who art everywhere and fillest all treasury of good things and giver of life, come and dwell within us and cleanse us from every impurity and save our souls, O good one. God, have mercy on us this evening and help us as we talk about these sensitive issues. Help us to become men and warriors for your kingdom. We pray this in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Okay. So here we go. This is like in black and white, and it looks like there's bombs all over. You ever see war movies where they're like fighting at night? It just looks like, yeah, it looks like a Black Hawk Down when they're looking through the night camera vision. That's what it looks like right here. On the Zoom, it's going to be a weird recording. Okay.
This looks like a Vikings.
Yeah, it's pretty close. Okay. Can everybody hear me out there? We could turn the mic on, but I'd rather not. Is everybody? Okay. Well, for all of you who were not here earlier, we're really glad that everybody could make it this weekend for our 4th annual Men's Purity Weekend. So tonight we're going to talk about something that's exceedingly important and pretty sensitive. I just want to prepare everyone now that I'm not speaking these things that are going to be hard to hear on purpose to, oh, thank you, hurt anybody's feelings. I want you to know that I'm speaking these things in love and for the purpose of helping you to secure the goal of your life, which is the eternal salvation in the kingdom of God, which is communion with the Holy Trinity here on earth and into eternity. So know that I love everyone here, even though some of the things that I'm going to say are hard or maybe painful. It is out of love that they are being said. And to be honest, for all of you who were here in the first, you already know that, and I said most of the painful things then. So it's maybe not going to be that painful for you guys, but it might be painful for all of you second-timers, but probably not, but just in case. So just to give a little background, when I was if you need me to stand up, just tell me, but I feel a lot more comfortable sitting down than standing up at a podium because it's just a lot more nicer teaching style. When I was a young man, the problem that we're facing in our society was already well underway. And I wish that there had been godly men to stand up and to talk about the reality of what a young man needed to hear. Simple things like this. What is a man? How am I to act around women? What are inappropriate things to do around women and inappropriate things to do in general? How do I gain character? How do I gain strength of soul and mind and body? What is it to be a good husband, and how do you become that? What are the things and pastimes that I should be avoiding? And what are the things that I must be instituting into my life on a daily basis? Sadly for me, I didn't have anyone to teach me these things. And this is not an exaggeration. I sought men all my life who would just tell me what it was to be a man. Now, the thing that is different for you than for me is that I was not in the Holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. And even though we in the church in the United States suffer from this problem that we're going to talk about, we at least have the answers, and we do have holy men that we can go to and learn from. But we still have to address these issues. So, brethren, we find ourselves in a society that is like none that has ever existed before. We live in a world where everything is turned upside down. Dear brothers, God created the world, and the pinnacle of his creation was man. He created man and woman with specific roles and specific actions that should be done by each of them. Today, this is turned completely upside down. Just like the prophet Isaiah says, quote, "Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, and put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Woe to those who are intelligent in their own eyes and experts in their own sight." And this is exactly what we have going on today. I mean, in a more clear way than ever before. I mean, who would have ever thought that in human existence there would be a nation that promoted through legislation the confusion of a man thinking that he's a woman, or a woman thinking that she's a man. And this is like the pinnacle of this confusion. But just the simple fact of calling things that are very bad good. Like the stuff we talked about this afternoon, these intimate things of self-abuse, pornography, sexual exploration, all this stuff, that the culture at large would say these are very good things, or just so many other things are upside down. And beyond that, everybody in our culture is an expert. All you have to do is go into the internet or go to YouTube, and everybody thinks they're an expert about everything. You know, it really is just like Isaiah says. God created men and women. I'm just going to go through some of these things that are all backwards. So God created men and women to have children. This was very clear, right, when he says, when we see the creation account of human beings. But now hardly no one wants to have children, and in fact, our society kills millions of babies every year. Women were created to be gentle, tender, loving, compassionate, bearing children and tending them. Now, women are taught to be hard, unkind. Well, they're not taught to be unkind. They just turn out this way. Hard, unkind, busy, aggressive, agitated, and masculine. Women were created to be helpers for their husbands, being the keepers at home. Nowadays, the last thing most women want is to stay at home as a wife or a mother. Although throughout history, there have always been women who had to work. And my mom had to work outside of the home. But it should be noted that it was only a few, and it was because they were so poor as a result of their husbands dying or being injured or having abandoned their families, that these women had to work. It was a means of survival. But please note, and this is where the things are turned upside down, it was not a badge of honor. It was a dishonor. Now women think it's strange, and society in general think it's strange for a woman to stay at home and keep it. If a high school girl says out loud that she wants to be a stay-at-home mother, she's really talked out of it in a lot of instances. It's an incredibly sad situation. Now we'll switch to men. Men used to have honor. Most of us don't even know what it is to have honor. What even do we mean by honor for a man? Not being willing. Okay, so men used to have honor, and men used to not be willing to have their wives work outside of the home. Not too long ago, a man would work 2 or 3 or 4 jobs just to provide enough for his family, allowing his wife to stay at home and to raise children. Not a lot of men. Now, a lot of men don't work at all. Many men, even men my age, stay at home and play video games all day. A lot of men, when they work, produce very little, do poor quality work, expect great pay for the least effort offered, and are weak and emotional. Many men cannot even receive correction from their supervisors on how to do their jobs correctly. This is also true in the altar. If in certain parishes, when the priest has to correct an altar server, we deal with the same thing. Not me, because I only am allowed to have blessed altar servers, so my guys don't. They just know what to do. But, I mean, this happens. I've seen it happen in other places where people just go and pout. If they are corrected... I wasn't talking about at your parish, but I have seen it. If they are corrected, they complain and gossip about their boss, telling everyone who will listen to them how, and I'm serious, I've heard this, mean he is, or how he hates them, or how unreasonable he is. All because he just said, hey, you're doing it this way, this is how it should be done. And he feels, our men in our society feel like, oh, he's just so mean to me. It's just so hard. And he's just unreasonable. And it's pathetic. This is absolutely pathetic. Men used to know that life was a struggle. They just knew. When you were a boy, you learned this. You knew that life was a struggle. It was not a surprise. It was just like, I'm a man, and when I become a full-grown man, it's going to be hard. They just knew it was going to be a struggle. They knew that work was hard. They knew that exhaustion was normal. Suffering, pain was expected. And not talking about the pain or the struggle at work was the norm. Men who did complain and talk about how hard it was or how mean their boss was would have been thought of as weak and effeminate, and oftentimes some other man who heard it would correct them for their weakness. Can you imagine a society where if you heard somebody complain about how mean their boss was, that some other man would be like, why are you whining about this, man? You got a job, I know a lot of people who don't have jobs. Shape up. Be thankful. At least he's telling you how to do the job right. He could have just fired you. I mean, there was a time when we lived in a place, like people are scared to even correct anybody these days. I mean, I don't know how it is actually in Homer, but I mean, down here, this is how it is in a lot of places. Men used to have honor. Always getting the door for ladies, putting their coats out on the proverbial puddle. Never, ever touching a woman inappropriately. Always talking to the man in her life who was the authority to get permission to develop a relationship. This is all things that are honorable. Now you can't finally can't hardly find a man who will even open the door. Most, and this is not their fault. Most men don't even know that should be expected. But this should be expected, young guys. But now I know you know. So when I see you not open door for grandma or your mom or your older sisters, I'm gonna be checking too. You can be sure of that. Men used to be brave. Men used to be brave. They were taught to be brave by their fathers and grandfathers and their uncles when they were young boys. They would fall down, they would get bloody, they would get picked back up, and they'd get slapped in the rear end and say, just keep going, son, you're going to be okay. Like, just put some dirt on it and let's go. I'm scared to do this. I'm scared to work the cows. I'm scared to do this. Like, it's okay. It's okay to be scared, but you still have to get this job done. Our society has made it in such a way that we don't even have the ability for our young guys to even, in a lot of instances, to even have this opportunity. You're a very fortunate young man, blessed, not fortunate, but blessed, if you have a familial situation where you even have time with older men. Because men are separated from the boys. And I think this is demonic and it's on purpose. But men used to be brave. They used to be able to look at death in the eye. They would face death with a boldness. Not that they didn't fear death. Real men fear and real men have emotions. But they didn't turn around and they didn't hide like cowards when they were afraid. They just went and they squared up and they faced it, whatever it was that was scary, and they dealt with it. Now most men have no honor, and most men are cowards. Probably none of you. But in case there are, I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. Most men would not protect, in our day and age, most men would not protect those weaker or those in need of protection. But many men, and this is so embarrassing, and I'm not making this up, many men look to their women, their parents, and to the government for protection. This is an absolute embarrassment for our race. Our race is men. I mean, I don't know if you've seen any of these tragedies where people have gone and killed people on subways or beat people up in the road and people just watch. Like, men are just like, whoa, glad I'm not that person. Instead of grabbing some other guys and saying, like, we got to stop this. What's going on? You know? And I really know that most of you are not in this situation. But there's going to be hundreds of thousands of Orthodox young people coming into the Orthodox Church. Maybe millions and millions. And this is an issue that we will deal with. I mean, listen to me. It's in the Orthodox Church now. I mean, there's many, many men who confess to priests. We just don't even know what it means to be a man. We don't know what it means to be a leader. We don't know how to be a husband. What is it? So, many men only think about pleasure and comfort and self-preservation, wanting to satisfy their sensual desires. And by sensual desires, I don't just mean sexual. And you need to make a note here. It's anything related to our five senses. The Apostle Paul, St. Paul, mentions sensuality a lot in his letters. And he's not only talking about sexual sensuality. He's talking about anything that is arousing any of your senses. Your eye senses, your smell senses, your emotional senses. That's why people watch comedians all the time, because they just want to feel happy and be laughing. Like, that's a sensation. Going on a roller coaster, that's a sensation. Listening to sad music, feeling melancholy, That's a sensation. All of these things are sensations. So it's not just physical, but men in our society are just seeking after this gratification, only wanting to feel good, having a good time, or having fun. So our modern American men spend their time following after these things like a group of cattle chasing a feed truck to the feed bunk, seeking to satisfy their desire to gorge themselves on whatever this tasty food is. But then comes the slaughter. So this is what most men in our society do. From the youngest boys, and we talked about this earlier today, from boys like 3 and 4 and 5, through young men, to high schoolers, to college-age guys, to people my age and way older. We have been trained in enjoyment and seeking after pleasure, instead of doing what men had done all throughout history. So this is what men throughout all of mankind had done. Most men were struggling to make a life better and safer for their families. They struggled in worshiping God and to serve Him and to serve their society. Men in our societies chase after these desires: watching TV and movies anytime they want to, playing video games much of their free time, eating anything they want when they want, watching pornography, masturbating anytime they have an urge, using soft drugs or hard drugs, listening to evil music and comedians and podcasters who tell them whatever they want to hear, tickling their itching ears, meeting every sensual desire that one could imagine, and being completely focused on pleasure and comfort. This is the state that we're in. It's a pretty dismal state. So this is the exact opposite of what a real man is. So number one, our current situation. Dear ones, men in our society, like I've been saying, are the weakest that they've ever been. And if that was not a big enough problem, our weak men don't even know that they're weak. And they don't know that they're effeminate. Because there's so few examples of strength and manliness in our society. Dear ones, maybe some of you are weak and effeminate. I don't know. How did we get to this position, such a horrible situation? What have been the causes for our getting here, and how can we get out of this mess that we are in? This is what I'm going to present to you tonight, dear ones. In this introductory lesson, we will be focusing on this. And by the end of this talk, I think we'll find a solution to our problem. Then in the following talks, we'll begin to look at specific problems and solutions to those problems. So, we're going to go over some history. How did we get here? And the reason we're going to do this is because if we're in a situation where my thesis is that we are in a dismal situation in our society, and that men are weak and effeminate and they don't even know it. So, first off, we have to look at how did we get to this situation, because this is instructive. If we can understand what it was that got us here, then maybe we can see the patterns that take men to this point, and we can try to reverse them in some sort of way, some sort of active way in our own lives. So number one, I'm going to go over there's some major changes in history that shifted the way that we in the world lived and worked. And then I'm going to go and look at some micro, like a small period of history that had many major effects that moved us from kind of like over here, already pretty much on the bad path to like where we are today very quickly. So, number one, what are the big effects? The things that affected the direction that that led to where we are now. Number one, when the Church of Rome schismed, leaving the Orthodox Church, leaving Orthodox Christianity. In the West, and this happened officially in 1054, but definitely by the 1100s, it was so severe that there was not much hope for reunification. In the West, this produced a change in the way people thought about life, from being creatures that needed to trust in the Holy Trinity for all of our provisions. Life prior to the schism in the whole Christian world revolved around the worship of the Creator in his church services and trust in him. So prior to the schism, both the East and the West, their whole rhythm of life, everything in their life revolved around the reality that I am a creature, the Trinity is the Creator, and that he created me to worship him. In the services and in my daily activity by being as diligent and faithful to his commands as I could be. This was the way people thought. This is how all life was. People were born, babies were born, but life all went around this way. Work, for the most part, was agrarian, and as farmers, their existence was a struggle. This is a key word. Struggle. You should get this into your mind. Struggle. It's not a bad thing. But it was an existence of struggle. They always had to work hard. Always having to be diligent to plant their crops. Always had to be diligent in pulling the weeds and thinning the plants. Never was there a time when these Christians were not beseeching God for rain to water their crops, fair weather to help them grow well, and that God would protect them from the pestilence that was come. This is the way they thought. Like in the deepest part of their life and in their mind, it was always, oh God, please. Oh God, please. We need this. We bow to you. We know that everything that's good comes from you. They really, really believe this all the time. Now, we have to tell ourselves this. Father, you better keep remembering that God provides for you. That God is the one who gives this to you. Okay, well, maybe take the person to the hospital, but if God doesn't work, tell yourself God's got to work and not trust all the doctors. You see how our mind totally shifts. It's a total big shift. Okay. After the split, the focus in the West shifted from this kind of life to academics, and eventually the Renaissance began. And with the Renaissance, the focus on education grew, and it grew very quickly. This then produced the Industrial Revolution, and both of these changes led mankind to trust less and less on God and God's provision, and more on man's ability to learn and to invent things to make life easier. To make life easier. This became the focus. And this is why this education was so important for them. Producing a life away eventually from agrarianism that had existed for all of the history of the church, and thus slowly moving their trust from God to themselves. Let's think back a little further. Think the Tower of Babel. Think about the Tower of Babel. So, that's the first change. The change that happened in the West as a result of the schism. Number two, major change, was the Industrial Revolution. So we fast forward several hundred years, and as time went on in the 1700s in Europe, the Industrial Revolution came. And this seemingly was great because the power allowed for many new conveniences. Things became easier. Again, there's the word. Growing comfort became something sought after by most people. Eventually, factories were built, and men left the countryside and their wives and children and went into the city to make money. Now the focus shifted from being able to grow enough to eat and on time to making money to buy things to make life easier. You got it. Number 3, life in the city. Prior to this, the primary place where people lived was in the villages that were scattered through the countryside where they worked the land. But now people moved to the city. The life working in the factory was not actually easier. So here's the situation before I get to this paragraph. So because of this mindset that took over Europe, Western Europe, people were thinking, look, it's hard here on the farm. We hear that there's factories in the city. They need workers and they'll pay you. And if you go, like this is the word that's being sent from the cities to hire people. If you go to the city, you'll be able to work and then you'll make money so that you can have conveniences. You'll have better shovels. You'll be able to buy 2 cows instead of having one that has a limp. You'll be able to get all this extra stuff. So many people, many men left. They left the city or left the farm and went to the city to make more money. But what actually happened was life working in the factory at this point in history was not easier. And most of the time it did not provide for more for the family. But it, in fact, broke the families up, taking fathers away from the farm, resulting in the mother and children suffering by trying to grow their crops without the guidance and the help of the father. Also, it resulted in the fathers not being able to be at home to teach the boys how to be men, nor to how to teach them how to respect women, nor to teach the daughters how to respond to men in a righteous, godly way. So in every way, this right away just backfired as far as a good idea. Furthermore, the fathers in the cities would end up using the money that they made from the factories to rent their apartments and use a little bit extra to buy alcohol and entertainment to fill their times when they were in town, not leaving hardly any money to send home. It was all a satanic scheme to break up the God-given order of the family that revolved around the worship of God and trust in Him to meet all of the needs. So is everybody tracking with me still? Okay, point B. The causes of our catastrophic lack of manhood among males today. So we'll just quickly review what we did. It eventually became such a bad situation that the people started to recognize it. And what I mean by that is the people who went to the city and those families that were in the farms, they knew this was not working out right. So, as always happens, Satan does something. It works really well to cause people to struggle. Then God's mercy, drawing people back, they say, what's going on here? Something's got to change. And they begin to try to correct it. And then Satan shifts his tactics and tries to address it another way. So he does like a counterattack. And that's what happens here. That's what happens here. As a result, Satan shifted his tactic and allowed more families to move into the cities with their husbands, but the breakdown had already started. The causes of the catastrophic lack of manhood amongst male today is this, but we'll first do this again. So number one, the Roman Catholic schism leading to the number 2, age of the Renaissance, which increased information and the importance of it. Number 3, the increased trust in education and the increased trust in knowledge over trusting God. Number 4, the increased lack of trust in God and the trust in man's ability to reason. Man stopped trusting God. And then the strength of the passion of avarice and covetousness and seeking comfort and pleasure drove his desire to learn more and more. That was the thing that drove his desire to learn. Avarice, covetousness, and a desire for comfort and ease drove his desire for education. Resulting in his dissatisfaction with his position that God had given him, and also his increase and growing lack of trust in God for his daily need. Then this brought about the Industrial Revolution as they sought after these comforts. Number 6, fathers leaving the farm in an effort to find an increase of financial gain, resulting in the mothers being left at home on the farm with the children, sons not having fathers in their lives to guide them, to guide the children, ultimately a greater suffering for both of the mother and the children at home on the farm, and the husband who is working in the city, and then him wasting all of his money on alcohol. Ultimately, that right there was the seedbed for feminism, because when man did that and he was away from his wife, he's there, and without his wife, and with the influence of the alcohol and the little bit of money and extra time that he had, he wasted his money in brothels, which treats women very horribly. And this whole cycle of laying the foundation for men to be thought of as horrible, brutish, bad creations of God were laid in all through society. Man bad, look at what he does. He's an alcoholic. He beats women. He goes to prostitutes, which of course is not God's desire for men. But this is what happened. And so now you have the seedbed for feminism to come. Number 7, ultimately the beginning of the breakdown of the family as history had known it was well underway up to this point. Number 8, the rise of feminism in the 1700s. And I was going to show a book to you. It's called The Death of Woman by Carrie Gross. It's called The Death of Woman, The Destruction of the Patriarchy. And this is a book that I would encourage everybody to read. And it is a book that I would encourage every Orthodox woman in the world to read, because it goes through with primary sources all of the beginnings of the feminist movement and how it was associated with atheistic or satanic worshiping men who actually were exploiting women. And it's written by Carrie Gross. It's a great book. It's really pretty hard. Some of it's very hard to read, but it talks about this whole effect, and you see it all the way up to our society. So again, number 8, feminism in our society. Okay, so that's like the big things. Now we're going to look at some of the specific things that moved us quickly from the beginning of feminism to where we are today. Number 1, by the time of the arrival of the late 1800s in the United States, the undercurrent of feminism had already gripped our society, like very much in our society. Number 2, besides this, the industrialized educational system had swept across our country with the influence of John Dewey, who was out of the University of Chicago. This really started in America in the late 1850s. And by the way, John Dewey was an atheist who was bent on the destruction of Christianity. But he is the one who created the Dewey Decimal System, for those of you who used to look at books when you had libraries that you actually went and got a book out of. Do you guys know what the card catalog system is?
Yeah,
Do they still teach you that?
Yeah.
Like they take you and they show you? That was John Dewey who created this system. But he also was the modern father of the public school system. So that spread all across the land. The result of this was children being taken away from their parents further than had already been happening at this point, which reinforced the breakdown of the God-given family order and the order of life. So here you go. Right away, when the Industrial Revolution happened, fathers left. So God created man and woman to come together and have children and to be like this, we call it a nuclear family. But in the Industrial Revolution, the fathers left the villages and the farm and they went a long, long ways away to the city to make money. And then they came back for a very short time. Now we have that still happening, but now also the children are taken away from the mother. So now you have the dad's gone, the children are gone, and now the mom is at home, which produces a great deal of discontent. Because women are very gifted at being very able to handle a lot of things all at once. It's amazing. Women can do just so much stuff. It's amazing. And this took all of their God-given work away. So now they're there at home realizing how bad they have it. Their husbands are jerks. Instead, now they're in the city with their husbands, their children are gone, but then their husband gets off of work, comes home. On his way home, he goes to the bar, gets drunk, come home, and it's not a good situation. So number 3, the beginning of the 19th century, or the 1900s, as the Industrial Revolution ramped up in the United States of America, places in the East and West Coast got electricity, and conveniences began to appear, such as lights, electricity in the houses, and eventually refrigerators and the like. These conveniences made life very easy for those who could afford it, of which we're very thankful for today. And I'm not proposing that we get rid of these things, so don't misunderstand me. I'm laying out the path of how we got to where we were. So they have these conveniences now. And then number 4, with these new inventions that electricity, the conveniences that electricity brought started to become affordable, people wanted them incredibly badly. And simultaneously, as they wanted these conveniences so badly, banks started offering this thing called credit. I don't know if you've ever studied history and realized these things all kind of happened at the same time. But credit was not ever for the regular people. It was for big, wealthy people who there was a lot of equity and capital that the banks could get stuff from. But easy debt for like a refrigerator, this was not something that was common. But these two things happened all at the same time. This is around before the Great Depression. But people are getting this easy debt. And so now human beings are making what would have seemed to be crazy decisions. Going into debt to buy an electric machine that they never needed just a week ago and they were getting along fine with. And I'm not saying that it was bad for them to buy the electric machine. What I'm saying is you see this shift where some people just saved up enough to buy that machine. And what was ludicrous, but started happening all over, is that everybody went, not everybody, but many people went and got debt just to get a convenience. Why? So life would become easier and the struggle would be less and less. While this all was happening, the feminist movement just kept marching throughout America, and it was going all over, attacking male leadership, attacking God's given role for men. And it started went throughout the Protestant churches all over the place. You can see this documented all over. And then eventually into the public spheres. Now, number 6 was during World War I, the men in the country, they just had to leave. And when they came back to their families again, these fathers that had been gone, they came back and they went to work at the factories, and they worked like double time to catch up from this time that they were gone. Many of the fathers died, but the ones that did came back, I mean, they gave themselves with honor and heroism to provide for their families. But see, the level of provision that they had to get was raised up by this new invention of electricity and having to have all this extra stuff. And so the provision that they would have needed before World War I was maybe here, but now after World War I was over, it was higher still. And so they had to work many hours, they were gone from their families, and the cycle just kept going on. Then World War II broke out, and so many, both young men and fathers, had to leave. And at this time, this is the great move, the satanic move to really enlarge feminism into our society. Because when the men left to go fight the World War II, many women went and started working in the men's jobs. Factory workers. This is just what happened. I'm not saying, making a complaint. I'm just saying this is the process of how this went. These women went and they worked in these factories when all the men were gone. And this feminist movement was now very rooted in the mothers of the baby boomers. Because these women who had been told all their childhood how bad men were and how abusive and how they just wanted to take, and you have to suffer and you do all this. And now they had this opportunity to go and work, and they found out that they didn't need their husbands to survive. They didn't need their fathers anymore. Why? Because they could just go out and get the same kind of jobs that men did. Now, obviously, when the factories were full of men, the whole standard was not the same standard of a man, but they did learn that they could still function these machines and get the job done and make stuff and earn an income. And so you have this way of thinking being now drilled in. So if we can just stop a moment and go back to the beginning, before the schism of the Russian church, how did people think? Only and always about God. Only and always about God. A baby was born. Somebody conceives, and she's expecting a baby. They think, that baby's going to get baptized. The baby's born. People are counting on the clock, looking like, oh, it's this day when my grandchild's going to be baptized. I'm going to be there 40 days. Their whole life was around God. Now, what is it? I can make the money that I need, and I don't need a man. You see the world of difference that we're in now? So you have this feministic mindset that Satan has planted going deeply into the minds of all of America. And these were the mothers of the baby boomers, dear ones. Women worked out of the home. Women working out of the home now became the norm. Even after men got home from the war. Many women came home and stayed at home, but women working out of the home now became something that was acceptable. Before World War II, this was not something that happened hardly at all. After World War II, it started happening at all. Also after World War II, dresses, head coverings, and women with long hair, which had been the norm for 7,000 years, were out. Number 7, when The women left the homes. This brought about the completion of the dissolving of the home. So you have the men gone, you have the children gone, and now you have the moms gone. And so what do you have? An empty shell. There's nothing in this circle, in this nucleus. It's just dissolved. It's empty. But we still call it a family, but it is definitely not what God calls a family, or how a family was. I mean, there's still a family, still a husband, still a wife, still children. But it's totally not the order that God had it to be. So when this happened, and the women started going to work all the time, this was the end. Because up to this point, there was major holdouts on the educational system. There was families all over the country that were like, I don't really want my kids to go to school. I want them to stay on the farm and work with us and so forth. But after this, it was over. Though many people didn't know it, many of the educators of these children now, who are now almost all children are in public school, many of these educators, both men and women, these professors in the 40s, 50s, and 60s were atheistic, anti-family, anti-men, communistic, and feminist-minded. And I'm just not saying this. I'm not like some sort of chauvinistic bigot or something. Like, this is documented information. You can go and you can find this. That these were the educators. This is why you had people looking for communists after World War II, because they were here. Number 8, when the men came back from World War, they worked very, very hard, working very long hours, being away from their children. The wives, when they came back to the home for the most part, but had such a great period of independence without the fathers and husbands because of the war, in addition to the feminist ideology that had been propagated since the 80s, that they developed a great disdain and disrespect for their husbands. Like, I don't need you. Why are you bothering me? I don't want to submit to you. Don't tell me what to do. This was like in the 50s, 60s. In concert to the above, these families entered into a stage where wealth became easy to attain. The soldiers that arrived back from World War II went to college, were educated, became businessmen or educated employees, and brought great wealth to the United States. So now these families have more wealth, more gadgets, more conveniences than ever before. Number 9, these fathers and mothers who had gone through the world wars and the Depression were now raising a group of children that we know today as the baby boomers. Millions and millions of these babies were born to these families, and these hardworking fathers doted over these children, giving them trinkets, giving them things, giving them more comforts and ease than any other human being had experienced to this point. I don't know if you realize this, but in the 60s and 70s, that's what happened to these children. Because this is like inventions were happening just nonstop. They were getting stuff all the time. And these fathers and mothers were giving their children all this. So much stuff. The ultra abundance and the feminist undercurrents produced a group of children that disrespected their fathers and blamed their fathers for all of the problems, all of their problems, and all of the problems in the United States, and all of the problems in the world. These people, the children, this is the children that generally became, they were liberal in general, even those who considered themselves Republican. They became very selfish people, and in fact, some people would consider them the most selfish people of history. And they have led our country to this dismal state in which we are in. These are the people that are now in their late 60s, 70s, and 80s. We call them the baby boomers. And I just want to mention this. I'm not trying to rail on them. I'm just giving a history lesson. And this is not their fault as much as this is just the path that history has taken people on and found them being born in. Okay, so I'm not trying to trash them or us or these young guys or anywhere in between. But if we don't understand what happened and how we got here, it's going to be really hard for us to look at ourselves personally and say, okay, here is the issue. Does that make sense? So if anybody's here and they're a baby boomer and they're just about to blow their top, then forgive me. And if anybody's watching this or will be watching this, I'm not trying to trash you, but this is, history has written this for us, and we can all see this. These children who we call baby boomers were the ones who were at Woodstock. They were the ones who produced the sexual revolution. They were exceedingly immoral, fornicating freely and proudly and openly. In the 80s, these young people sought wealth at any cost. They were the people who would have been called as, when I was a child, they called themselves yuppies, young upper class people. I don't know if any of you who are younger than me have ever heard that, but this was a term I heard my father and his friends saying, like, look at that yuppie. I want to be like that. I mean, I remember hearing this from my parents. This generation is the divorce generation with a divorce rate that was well over 50%. They divorced because marriage was hard, harder than they thought it would be. And in their selfishness and great self-indulgence, it was not what they wanted, nor what they expected. And this is important, because now we're getting to the crux of our issues. Because they got everything that they really wanted from the time that they were born, 1950, 51, 52, 53. In their lifetime, radio with music that tickled the ears came in. Things came on television that tickled through their eye gates. They got to play sports. They didn't have to milk cows anymore and go to the fields. Most of them shifted from farm life to city life. They got to go to college. They didn't have to pay for it themselves. Their parents bought them cars. Their parents gave them everything. They didn't have just one pair of pants for the week and one church clothes, like so many people had in the past. So they got used to things being nice and easy and being catered to. And then when you get married, guess what? When you get married, that is not how life is. Here is one selfish person who marries another selfish person, and they have to learn to be selfless. Marriage is a practice of being selfless. And these people were not that, and it didn't work. And this is why that generation out of most divorced just like so much. So that's what happened then. During the 80s and 90s, as so many of these baby boomer families were breaking up, the invention and mass production of the first video games, Atari in the 70s and the Nintendo in the 80s, were invented. Movies and cable came and captivated the whole mass of young people. I was one of those young people when the cable came out. I remember when cable TV came out. You know how many stations were on it? Just guess in your head.
7. 50.
1,000.
Yeah, it's right. 7 to 12. That was it. Because now you think of cable or satellite, and there's like 120 stations. Back then, there was 4 stations before cable, and you had antenna that you had to like move around for it to catch. And then cable came in and there was 7 stations. But that was the big thing. You know, it was a big thing. And so this was really nice for the baby boomer parents, because now parenting shifted from how it had all through eternity to this even newer way. By simply giving your children these new inventions that they could just sit down and watch. all night long. All the fuss that the parents had was, hey, it's 1 a.m. It's time to go to bed. Ah, really? Janie or Jack only gets to spend the weekend. Can't we just stay up until 3? I mean, like, parenting was much different now because you just put the children in front of a screen, and then they got to watch. And that produced a whole series of problems. So these children, me, in my generation, were then trained in high levels of self-satisfaction and satisfaction of all of our sensual desires. But while I was growing up, there would still be an occasional reproof from an employer, a coach, a teacher, a pastor, or a friend or a parent. I do remember getting reproved, but I remember it being very few and far between. And when it did happen, it was incredibly painful. I can almost remember every time I got chewed out by somebody who was not my parent. Did you know, before my generation, it was not that uncommon for you to just get yelled at by anybody if you were doing something wrong? Like, you could be walking down the road and doing something stupid, and some man would come out and be like, boys, what are you doing? Get your heads on your shoulders. Knock that off right now. And then and then you would think, like, oh no, maybe they're going to go talk to my parents. I better straighten up. I mean, this is actually how it was. And it was still that way in some of the rural areas when I was growing up. I remember one time I had this cousin who, she was taken by foster care and put into the family, my mom and my stepdad's family, Catherine. And so I was like the big brother. I was like 13 or 14, and I got to push around in the stroller in the little city we lived in. And I loved to run, and it was so much fun to push the stroller full blast like a race car. And I remember I got in such trouble one night because somebody had called my parents and said, Stephen was pushing Catherine around. It was so dangerous. And I got really in trouble. And that never happens anymore. Okay. So now we have 8. Okay, so while I was in high school, number 13, 2 things came into our society that captivated us even more and really propelled us in this bad way. Number 1 was called political correctness. The second one was the internet. So political correctness, this really is an ideology that was brought about that was like, you could call it the mother of woke, which is basically like you cannot say certain things because certain things are so rude or just not acceptable. But it's really an ideology from one side of the world's population that says, if you don't think the way that I do, but I hear you say something, then I'm going to trash you so much that you're going to be embarrassed to do this. This was called political correctness. And it was a pretty liberal movement. It wasn't like the conservatives were, getting upset about people doing crazy stuff, dyeing their hair or whatever. I mean, they thought that was weird, but they never made it a political issue. But it became a political issue, and it eventually birthed what we have today in our woke culture. And then the internet came out. So let's look at political correctness, this insidious ideal that taught that you could not say anything that would offend anybody. If you said something that others didn't like, they basically threw a fit and demonized you, and the result is that people began afraid to speak the truth, and they would not say out loud what they believed. Number 15, the internet. The internet has brought so many bad things. Yes, it's been a great convenience, and there's no doubt about that. It's been a great convenience. But it has brought about more damage, and that damage is far worse than the help that it has given. That I truly believe this. The worst, but I use the internet. I'm not telling you all these things because I think we can go backwards. Because I don't think we can go backwards. We are where we are, but we have to fix ourselves. And I don't think I'm going to stop using the internet. I'm not proposing that. I do think I should stop, and you should stop being politically correct if you are. You should speak the truth in love. But so the internet brought many bad things. Number one, the worst thing it brought was pornography, which has destroyed millions and probably billions of lives and families. Number two, social media. People now do not know how to communicate. Really. The mass of young people do not know how to communicate in a normal way. And it's really, really bad. So, C. The accumulated result of these elements is this. All of this stuff that I just went through is, number one, a society that has become hyper-selfish, seeking after self-gratification. So all of these pieces of history are just so that we can actually see, yeah, we have become a people that are hyper-selfish. And I don't mean in such a way that you wouldn't give somebody some of your stuff. But what I mean by selfish is that you're seeking stuff for you all the time. Like, it's just like you're only thinking about me. What's best for me? What's best for me? What's best for me? I like this. I like this. That's my favorite flavor. That's my favorite color. This is my favorite sound. This is where I like to be. Me, 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 me. What can I get next? It's just about me. Which is kind of a result of capitalism. Like, hey, Joel, I have this car that I think you really like. And isn't it about time that you trade your old wheels in, because they don't look as nice as this? You would look so good in my car. That's why you should buy it. Or whatever it is. I mean, that's what marketing is. And I get it, but it's part of our selfish society. Number two, a society that has the highest goal for most people is pleasure, comfort. This should not be the highest goal, of course, for the Orthodox Christian. And I'm not applying this to the Orthodox Church. I'm just saying, like, in our society as general, this is it. And we're affected by this. Okay? So we're affected by this. A society that has its highest goal as pleasure, comfort, ease, a lack of responsibility. Number three, a nation full of men who are weak. They're weak physically, emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually. Number four, a nation full of very, very confused men and women whom the Spirit of God is actually drawing to himself. And they're trying to do what's right, but they just don't know what's right. Like, the society, I think, is so ripe for harvest. But there's just such confusion because all of this, just think if you grow up and you think, what's the truth about God? But if you ask someone, and they might have the right answer, but they're too scared to say it because of political correctness, where does that leave you? Or what if you have been on the internet and you want to tell somebody what you feel, but somebody told you that if you say this phrase, they'll give you some bad emoji that means some stupid thing that makes you feel like somebody's going to say that you hate them or something. Because this dysfunction in the societal psyche. We just have such confusion. It's just so confused. But these young people want God, and God's working in their hearts, which at the same time as a struggle, it's a blessing. Number five, a nation full of men whose hearts are aching. Men that are crying out to be shown what it is to be a man. Okay? So that's how we got here. That's what I propose to you is our problem in our society, and this is truly affecting the Holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. So how does this current situation get corrected? So now we're at the who, what, and why, and now we're at the how. How do we correct this? So here's how, dear brothers. The how do we repair the situation that we find ourselves in? How are we going to transform our nation of men, or at least the Orthodox men that are the weakest, most effeminate in history, in the history of the planet? How are we going to make them strong once again? And here's the answer. To imitate the true man. There is only one way that we can fix ourselves and that society can be fixed. And that is by imitating Jesus Christ, who is the true man, the theanthropic man, the God man. We were created in the image and likeness of God. And our whole existence as human beings now is to heal the damage that has happened so that we can have communion with God. That our spiritual eye, our nous, or our mind, is renewed so that we can truly commune with God. And the way that we do that is by imitating Christ and chasing after Christ with our whole heart. We need to become Christ-like. Be imitators of God as beloved children. Walk in love, even as Christ also loved us and gave himself up for us as an offering and a sacrifice to God, a sweet-smelling fragrance. Ephesians 5, 1 through 2. The apostle says this in Romans 8:29. To be conformed to the image of his Son, so that his Son might be the firstborn among all the brethren. Then he says in the book of Philippians 2, verses 5 through 8, let the following be your mind, which was also in the mind of Christ. He who existed in the form of God did not consider equality with God as something to be taken by force. Instead, he emptied himself. Christ emptied himself, taking the form of a bondservant, being made in the likeness of men, and being found in human form. He humbled himself, becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on the cross. So, if we're going to heal ourselves by being like Christ, we have to notice things like this. And as we go through 1 Peter, we're going to notice a lot of these things. But he says that we are to have the mind of Christ. And Christ humbled himself, and he gave himself for everybody. And if you want to heal yourself, and you want to do it really fast, become a hardcore servant to every person. Just humble yourself and fight against your will and just put everybody before you. Ask how you can help. Ask what you can. Actually, this is the easiest way to get over a porn addiction too. Become a servant. Go volunteer. Do work for free. Pour yourself out. Don't have any spare time. But this is the first step. Be imitators. Galatians 2:20 says, I have been crucified with Christ, and it is no longer I who live. That is not how it is in our society. It is, I am crucified to the world, and I live by the world. The life I live for myself, and for the son of perdition, and for the fleshly desires. That is what our motto for most people in this country is. But we are Orthodox Christians. We are to be men. We are to be warriors for Christ. If we're going to be warriors, then we have to imitate Christ. And we have to be able to get to the point where we can say, I have been crucified with Christ, and it is no longer I that live, but Christ lives in me. I now live this life in the flesh I no longer live this life in the flesh, but I live it by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. And 1 Corinthians 16:13, quote, act like a man. Stand firm in the faith. Be courageous. Be strong. Let all that you do be done in love. Which I especially like that because you have this very important thing. A lot of people who then are trying, these confused young men who are trying to be manly, they take this search, and some of them have found the Orthodox Church, and they're becoming men. Glory to God. But many of them are finding the wrong turn, and they're finding people like Andrew Tate and other bad influencers that are telling them the wrong thing. They're telling them to be brave and be courageous and then do a lot of bad things, but to not do them in love. But we are Christ, and we're to be brave, and we're to be courageous, and we're to be strong, and all of those things that we're doing, we're supposed to do in love. And love is not an emotion. Love is an action that when you're doing it, births an emotion often. But love is doing what is best for other people. It's having a servant heart and putting others before yourself. The way we become like Christ is this. We must renew our minds. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, or nous. That is the Greek word nous. So that you may prove what is good, well-pleasing, and perfect. So that you may prove what the good, well-pleasing, and perfect will of God is. So the reason I went through all of these things tonight is so we could come to the point where we can confess to ourselves, yes, my mind is not where it needs to be, and it needs to be renewed. If we're going to become like Christ, we have to, in the Orthodox Church, we call this, there's a Greek word, which I can't pronounce, nor do I remember it right now, but it's called self-accusation. We're always accusing ourselves. If something's going wrong, you say, I probably did something. I probably caused the problem. But we have to start with ourselves. And in renewing our minds, we start with ourselves. We say, I need my mind renewed. I'm wrong. I'm prideful. I'm selfish. I want sensual desires fulfilled all the time. So we start with honesty with ourselves. Moreover, this is in Ephesians 4:23-24. Moreover, you are to be renewed in the spirit of your mind, and to put on the new self. This is so great. Your new self is this. Let me know if you want it. To put on the new self, who is the likeness of God, who has been created in righteousness and the holiness of truth. Do you want to be the likeness of God?
Yes.
Yes, brothers, I want all of you to be in the likeness of God. I want to be the likeness of God. You were created in his likeness. We were created in his image, which is the ability to think, to have emotion, and to choose. Mind, will, and emotion. That's the image of God. The likeness of God is what we are trying to get back to. We have to heal these three by self-honesty and the work of the Holy Spirit, spiritual work, which is us working with God, synergy. And in doing that, the likeness of God comes back. And this is the process of becoming deified. This is the process of becoming deified. It says in 2 Corinthians 3:18, with unveiled face, beholding as in a mirror the glory of the Lord, we are all being transformed into the same image, from glory to glory, and this is from the Lord, the Spirit. Okay, number 2, and we're almost done, dear ones. Imitate those who imitated Christ. This is the other way that we become like Christ. So the first way we become like Christ is renewing our mind, and the second way is imitating those who were like Christ. And here, who was that? Who was like Christ? The apostles, the saints, and those who imitate their lives. 1 Corinthians 4:16 says, I beg you, therefore, be imitators of me. This is the Apostle Paul. He's telling his church, imitate me. He says in another passage in the book, be my imitators, even as I imitate Christ. So Paul is an imitator of Christ, and he's urging his people to imitate him. So I'm urging me and all of you, imitate the Apostle Paul and take his teaching seriously. What you have learned, received, heard, and saw in me, practice these things, and in the God of peace will be with you. That's Paul, the St. Paul to the Philippians in 4 verse 9. And in 2 Timothy, to his beloved Timothy, the great apostle says, you, however, have paid close attention to my teaching, conduct, purpose, faith, patience, love, steadfastness, persecutions, and suffering. The question that I have for all of us, dear ones, is have we paid close attention to the apostles' teachings? Certainly some of you have, but I'm not asking those ones who have, I'm asking you. Are you familiar with the epistles, dear ones? How many times have you read through the New Testament? How familiar are you?
Not nearly enough.
Not nearly enough. You should know it like the back of your hand. You should know these injunctions so much. Oh, they will save you from so much pain if you tarry in them. If you could add up all of the hours since January 1st that you have watched movies or news or played video games, and you could add that up into hours, how many hours in comparison to that have you read the writings of the apostles, dear ones? I'm just asking. It's a good thing to think about, don't you think? Christ comes and lives in us. Those of you who are baptized and confess and take Christ, you are Christ. Christ lives in you. You should walk as much in his image as you can. But dear ones, you will not be able to if you don't know how you're supposed to live. How could you? So let us be imitators of those. If we're going to become like Christ, we need to imitate him, renew our minds, and we must become very familiar with the scriptures and live according to its teachings. And we must reject all the desires of the flesh. We need to shun comfort and ease and set our eyes straight on the cross and move that way. If you did not pick up the theme of history since the Great Schism, here is the theme. Rejection of suffering and a chasing after ease and comfort. Generation after generation after generation. This is why when the men who become monks, you may not even know, you may have even asked yourself, why do these guys do so much that is just so uncomfortable? Why would they sleep on the floor? Why would they fast? Why would these guys live up on the top of Mount Athos where it's cold all the time? Why would they live where it's like a desert and they're wearing black cassocks? Why do they do all of this stuff? It's because they know that they have to push themselves away from this great desire and comfort so that they can see clearly how to live for Christ. And I'm definitely not telling you to do that unless you're called to be a monk. But what I am telling you to do is consider all of the comforts and the eases that you have, and maybe just push yourself a little. Push yourself a little to have it be a little tougher. Push a little harder. Wake up a little earlier. Stay up a little later. Maybe memorize some of the scripture. Memorize some of the great quotes from the saints. Read a book. Instead of watching a movie, say, instead of watching a movie, I'm going to read a book. I'm just something, just a little bit of something to push yourself a little further or pull yourself back. Dear brothers, what I've shared today is a hard truth. And it is not intended to hurt anyone or to offend anyone. This is not my desire. It is shared in order for us to wake up, get a real glance at reality, and to strengthen ourselves. And to resolve to commit ourselves to our vow that we made when we became slaves of Christ. Some of you are baptized, and they made the vow for you. Others of you were cognitive. But you made a vow to become a slave to the King of the universe, the King of glory, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And so, let us resolve to hold our vow that we made at Holy Baptism and to reject the works and the ways of Satan, and that we would become true and faithful slaves and true warriors of the kingdom of God, giving everything that we have in our life for Christ, even to the point of giving our lives up in physical death to serve God and others in his behalf. So, dear ones, we will build upon this in the next couple of sessions. We need to understand how weak we are in order to make us strong, and in order to make a strength training plan for ourselves spiritually. In the next sections, we're going to look at the practical ways to gain spiritual strength, emotional strength, psychological strength, and to a certain degree, physical strength. So, keep your chin up. I don't want anybody to be discouraged, because I love you and God loves you, and he wants to see a new generation of warriors. And I think that you guys are as good as anybody to fill that role. So with that, I'll open it up if anybody has any questions, and then we'll look at the situation with the time, and we'll see where we're at as far as breaks and stuff. Any questions?
How would you explain what it means to be an effeminate man?
An effeminate man. Yeah, this is a hard one, and it's excessively offensive. So,
Hit me.
if you look back in history, men would go away and they would have rough clothing that was intentional and had purpose. You know what I mean by intentional? Intentional is like, here's an example. When you get to the age of courtship and you're like interested in a young lady or whatever, most people are definitely not intentional. Like, she's good looking, I like her, hey baby, you want to go on a date? And there's just like, you're just looking for a good time, pleasure, just wanting to get to know. Then there are other people who are like, look, I'm not going to waste my time. I don't have time to waste. I'm not about just dating chicks for fun. But they have an intent, an intention. I want to get married because God calls us, if we're Orthodox, to either be monastics. That means you're either called to be a nun or a monk, or to be married. And I'm of age. I definitely know that I'm not called to be a monastic. So I'm going to start a relationship that's intentional. So I'm going to talk with this young lady, for instance, with the purpose of, like, is she somebody that I could marry or not? That's an example of intention. Or like, I am going to get this job because I have the intention to make this money so that I can do this with it. Like, that's intentional. So you have a purpose. You're just not kind of like floating nebulously. Okay, so in the old days, men would dress with intention. They needed heavy clothes. They needed something to protect them from the elements. They didn't really care if it was stylish or handsome or whatever. Effeminacy has gone so far. Probably most of us are affected with it. Like, I certainly am. Like, this is kind of effeminate, and I'm embarrassed to say it, but like, I don't wear it anymore because I wear black, but I would look for really like nice, cozy sweaters. Like, I love sweaters, but really, guys, like, looking for clothes that look nice, or like, oh yeah, like that's great. Like, it puts me right into like comfort zone, and I feel warm and fuzzy. That's not traditionally like man thinking. It's effeminate. And that's okay, because moms need to be that way. Moms take the babies, and they need the babies to be warm and fuzzy. They actually do. It's their place to be in a nice, protected place where they can keep the house warm, keep it fuzzy, keep the children safe, keep the children dry, keep them clothed. And you're out there supposed to be fighting, traditionally. This is not how it can be anymore, because the world, the way it works is like, we're not agrarian, and we're not hunters, and we're not warriors anymore. So I'm not saying like this is how it has to be, but I'm just saying like this is what has happened. We used to be men who were outside getting rained on, getting beat, it's just like, and we weren't thinking about like, do my shoes look really nice? How are these slacks? Does this make my butt look big or skinny, or like, oh, you have a flat butt? This was not how men used to think. There were always feminine men. Effeminacy is also not wanting to suffer at all. Like, oh, if I do that, I might get a blister, or if I do that, I'm probably going to get a sunburn, or that's just way too scary to go out there and do that thing. That's kind of effeminate. Not wanting to be around somebody who is going to correct you because it will hurt your feelings. That's effeminate. Women were created to be emotional. Women were created to be emotional for the purpose of being able to take care of children. There is this intuition that most women have naturally, where they are very good at sensing stuff and having empathy and seeing the child fall and say, oh, that really does hurt, because she remembers that they're still little. They're like 2.5. Where a dad, naturally, a dad's problem is probably like him, like, get up, boy, like, stop crying. And that's also good and natural because the child has to have this balance working together so that if it's a baby boy, he can still become a man. And if it's a little girl, she can know like, oh, ouch, dad's a warrior. But I sure like when mom helps me when I fall down better than dad. And she becomes soft. And so she can pick these things up. And this is kind of the difference. So it's hard to put a thumb on effeminacy because the sexes in our day have been so stripped down and made into a unisex. And that unisex is really in a more feminine image. It's not a much more masculine, although you do have like the boss babe, sorry if your name is Karen and you're listening to this, but you have the Karen syndrome. I mean, there are those, but most of this, like, let's strip men from their manhood and women from their womanhood has blended like mostly effeminacy with like men, we can do what men do. And men have been brought down to this level of thinking like, well, I can't say this, I shouldn't do this, I need to submit, I need to do all this stuff. And instead of having that, like St. Paisios said this afternoon, there has to be a little bit of a streak of wildness if you're going to do something. Like effeminacy is self-preservation. Women, their job is to protect the little ones and to keep the house safe while the man is gone. When men become like that in their efforts for everything, like, oh, I can't do this because what if I get hurt? I can't do that because what if I get hurt? I can't do that because what if I have a loss? Or I can't do all of this. Like, that's a bit effeminate. Boy, that's a real hard one to just answer right off the cuff without like digesting it. I mean, maybe you should write a paper for us, Joel. And where is your wordsmith? Yeah, Gideon should also work on it. Have this paper to me, Gideon, in 2 months. And we'll work on it together. So that's a great question, and I don't have the right. I don't know. I just don't know it all because the problem is I'm still so weak and effeminate myself. I was not raised by a man. My parents got divorced when I was little. I was raised by my mom. She did her very best. I didn't have my grandfather. And so all I can do is like, I can't necessarily put my finger on effeminacy, but like look, I can tell you some things. Like I saw 2 men they had really handsome beards, but I'm pretty sure they were gay and they were carrying dogs around in the airport. That's effeminate. That's effeminate. Guys who like, I mean, I could point it out, like, guys don't act like that. Like, oh, stop that. That's effeminate, definitely. Like, wearing pajama pants all day, that's effeminate. Waking up in the morning and not getting dressed and putting your clothes on and just, being super comfortable for a long time, that's effeminate. Like, you should get up, go to the bathroom, brush your teeth, get your coffee going, get your clothes on, and be a man. But I know what it is to be a man. I had my grandfather, and he always told me, Stephen, you have to have honor. You do not touch a woman. Never touch a woman. You never kiss a woman on the first date. That's dirty and wrong. My grandpa drilled us when I was in elementary school. You never, and the problem was, what happened was, when I was in high school, the girl kissed me first. I was like, what am I supposed to do now? Well, the door already got open, so I was, I just went all the way. I just kept kissing. I didn't go all the way, but I went through the door. But he was always like, you get the door. Stop whining. Don't tell people how bad it is. Like he taught me some things to be a man. But like, to be honest, when I was a sophomore in college, it all of a sudden hit me. Like, I had played college football. I had girlfriends. I was handsome. I was not like strong like my black sons, but like I was pretty strong. And I was just like, but you know, I was so empty because I didn't know what it meant to be a man. I just was like, and so from that point on in my life, all I did, I searched out what it was to be a man. When I got married, I was just reading anybody that was saying anything about being a man or being a good husband or being a good father. Because I didn't have any examples. Because, I mean, I grew up, my parents and all of my aunts and uncles were the baby boomers, and everybody I knew was getting divorced. I knew like 2 families or 3 families that didn't get divorced. That was all. I mean, my world was, it was just very much common with everybody, but just not as bad as it is for these poor people today, because I didn't have all this internet stuff. I mean, I'm sure I would have been just so much worse than anybody today if I had grown up in these days. So I'm definitely not judging anybody. I'm just so thankful that I wasn't raised in your generation. I'm so sorry for you guys. I'm not trying to be funny. I mean, I really am sorry. I cry for you guys. My heart breaks for you young men. You young men, listen to me. You need to find manly men who you know are honest and love God, but will tell you the truth. And you need to stick with those guys, because we're just so far gone. And that's how faith is transmitted. And hopefully you have, if you have a father that will do this, then may God help your fathers. So, any other questions? Okay, so I don't know if anybody brought Bibles, and we may not do the other session tonight. If we do, I'm not sure. I may call an audible and we'll switch up. We may do half of it and then start it tomorrow. But we're going to go through the book of 1 Peter. It has very, very many practical